Today we are going to look at and learn how to play the ancient Aztec board game Patolli. Patolli is a game that when we look at how to play, you may see a lot of similarities to other ancient board games, especially ancient race games that we have. Yet, like a lot of other games, this one was developed in isolation, meaning it's really purely a coincidence that it's going to resemble some of our other games because at the time of its development, the Aztecs had not yet made contact or cultural exchanges with these other ancient civilizations around the world. So when we look at the game of Patolli, the rules that are going to be presented today are the best estimates or the best hypothesis surrounding how this game is played due to the lack of any written rules. Unfortunately, a lot of artifacts and a lot of Aztec writing that we would maybe have was destroyed during the Spanish conquistador takeover, essentially, of the Aztec civilization. So using the best clues we do have, let's take a look at how we played the ancient Aztec board game Patolli. So here we have a setup for a game of Patolli. The object of the game is to get all 6 of your pieces onto the board, entering at a designated corner square here in the center, moving your way around the different squares on the board to the final square, and then moving your piece off. The first player to get all 6 of their pieces on and back off the board becomes the winner. Now in Patolli, you can also lose the game before the other player wins. You lose if you are called upon to add treasure to the gambling pot, and if you are out of treasure, you immediately lose. One of the things that kind of sets Patolli apart from some of the other ancient racing games we see is the high level of betting and gambling within the game itself. One of the reasons many believe that this game might have been outlawed by Spanish missionaries and conquistadors after they made contact with the Aztecs because of the issues surrounding gambling, and gambling might have escalated to Aztec people gambling themselves into slavery, selling their children, all through playing this board game. Now, we're not going to sell any kids while we are going through this version of it. We're just going to look at the basic mechanics though. So you are set up on either side, and each player is going to have a designated square in the center. So like for blue, it would probably be this square that's right next to them. For red, it would be this one here. That's the square you're going to enter your pieces when they get onto the board. Now the way you get onto the board is the same way you are moving, is you are going to roll 5 beans. So these beans are marked black on one side, blank on the other, and depending on how many sides come black up shows how many spots you can move. You would roll the beans, count up, and if you have a piece on the board, you're able to move. To get a piece onto the board, you need to roll just 1 black bean up. When you roll 1 black bean, you can take a piece not on the board yet, and you can put them on your starting square. Now, if you roll something else, you move your pieces along the board instead. Now you can move, once you've placed your first piece on the board, you can choose to move clockwise around or counterclockwise. Whichever way you choose though, that's the way all of your pieces are going to move. And your opponent might choose to move the other way. So on your first turn, you get to place a piece on. So you're going to start out with a piece on the board ready to go. So then from then on, every time you are rolling, you're either going to move that 1 piece or you're going to get a 1 and be able to put a new piece on. So if blue rolled 3 beans black side up, I can move 1, 2, 3. So I'm moving each square around the outside. When I come here to the end, I'd wrap around, down, into the center square, and now move down and around this side, back to this center square, which is red's starting square, down and around, and so on, until I get to this final square before I would go back to my starting square. From that point on, I need an exact roll wherever I'm at here to bear my piece off. So say I was right here, I'd need to roll 1, 2, 3 exactly to move my piece 1, 2, 3 off the board. As you're rolling, you sometimes roll a 1, get to place a new piece on. If you roll a few rules, when you are rolling your beans, you cannot land on another player. So if I rolled a 2 and I'm moving this way, I cannot move that piece because I can't land on top of the red opponent. I also would not be able to share a space with myself. I couldn't land on my own piece. If you roll and there is no possible move you can make, you need to take one of your treasures and put them into the pot. Now, the only place that that is not true is on these 4 gray squares in the middle. If you have a piece in the gray square, it is in danger from your opponent. If they roll and they're able to move and they land on one of the gray squares that has an opponent's piece, they take that spot and your piece gets put back outside and needs to start all over again with a new 1 roll. Also, if you get a piece kicked off one of the inner squares, you need to take a treasure and put it into the pot. There are a few other special squares. There are these black triangle ones here. If you are moving a piece and you land on a black triangle, you lose your next turn and you need to put treasure in the pot. If you land on one of these kind of half circle shaped gray squares on the outside, you get an additional turn. So if you land here, you get to roll the beans again and continue moving. The final bit is when you get to the end and you move a piece off, your opponent needs to put a piece of treasure into the pot. So the pot's going to build quite a bit over the course of the game because you are giving up treasure if your piece is getting kicked off the board in the middle. You're giving up treasure if you land on a black triangle square. You are giving up treasure if you roll the beans, and because of all the pieces on the board, there's no legal rule legal move you can make. You're also giving up a treasure every time your opponent moves one of their pieces off the board. So this pot would get very big, and this could become a very lucrative game for ancient Aztecs who were playing it in a betting fashion. Now, some of you looking at how this game plays might recognize that it is very similar to the Indian ancient game of Parcheesi. Some anthropologists have even theorized that the game of Patolli was developed after the Aztecs had come in contact with conquistadors, and perhaps there was a cultural exchange of Indian Parcheesi boards that inspired them to develop this game. Modern-day anthropologists believe that both games have actually been created in isolation, and it is just a coincidence based on the limited kind of combination of games developed during these ancient times that both games are similar, but they were developed completely independent from each other. So, Patolli is another one of our games where we can use pieces that are improvised from around the house. We could find different coins, pieces to represent characters. The board is another one that is fairly simple to make your own version at home. So the Aztec game Patolli, another interesting ancient board game of ours that has a lot of similarities to others, which shows a striking amount of commonality between these ancient board games. Even though these civilizations had no contact with each other, they're developing these games that have a lot of shared traits and a lot of shared themes. So I hope you will check out the Aztec board game Patolli.